We're going to go ahead and get started. As more people start to come in as well and join us, they can join in as we go. Welcome tonight to the Shelby High School Student Financial Aid session. I am Jennifer Fry. I'm the Director of Enrollment Services here at The Ohio State University at Mansfield. Excited to come here with Ms. Learback to talk about financial aid, some options, try and explain some of the options of financial aid as well as you have questions. I know some things, I may not know it all. And if we don't know the answer, we will get you the answer, tomorrow if we can, as soon as we can find that answer. So we'll go ahead and get started. As you're going through this, as you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. You also have the Q&A function. We will get to those questions at the end. Trying to navigate that and talk sometimes may not be the best. So we'll go ahead and answer those questions in the chat feature. At that time, it is being recorded, so you will be able to see this later if you have some more questions or didn't catch something right away. I do welcome you taking a picture of the slides. You're more than welcome to take a picture of the screen. That way you have that information as you go through. It may be very helpful. And I will be emailing a form to your counselors so they can have that. Your students can come pick it up as well. One's a budget sheet that might help. And then another one is just some FAFSA information, some of the definitions of some of the words too. So we have found people have found that helpful. So they'll be able to get that in another way. All right, so starting off with what we're going to talk about tonight is the determination of what financial need is. I think for financial aid, even if this isn't your first child going to college, really finding out what that determination is, knowing what those financial aid basics are, and those helpful resources. There's a lot of things out there. Sometimes I think we forget or we may not even know of, and that's what our job is to really help you identify the resources available to you, depending on where you fall on these scales. So financial aid is really just a variety of fund options for families and also for students. So for the traditional age students, it's family also is going to be reported on the financial aid. And we want you to be able to have those options to fund your college through the federal, state, and also institutional level. This is going to be for all colleges, private, public. They're all going to be different, what is going to be offered to those institutions. So what may be shown for Ohio State may be very different from University of Cincinnati to Ashland University. So that's why it's very important to talk with your financial aid offices and just really be aware of what it is at each institution. And I'll get into why it'll be like that. So need is calculated by the cost of attendance, which is the budget that you have for the schools, minus the expected family contribution, which is the EFC. EFC is found by filling out the FAFSA, or that free application for federal student aid, and that determines financial need. So financial need, since cost of attendance varies from school to school, a student's financial need will change from school to school. After that need is determined, it is possible that a student is eligible for need-based programs, maybe non-need-based programs. It all depends what those numbers come in. And then the institutions themselves can determine what they have to offer within their aid packages and with the aid that they receive from the federal and state level. For us, the direct costs are going to be your tuition, your fees, and your room and board. So if your campus requires that first-year students, second-year students, your student live on campus, that's going to be part of those direct costs. The indirect costs are going to be books, personal expenses. We're expecting your students to buy laundry soap. We're expecting them to, buy soap and take showers or baths or what have you, wherever they're living. And so those all kind of come into those indirect costs. It's going to be what their living expenses are. Tuition, fees, room and board will show up on university bills, more likely than not. The indirect costs most likely will be separate. But they're all going to go into that cost of attendance. And that cost of attendance is then what the federal government will base your aid on when it comes to your packages. For expected family contribution, there is an expectation that the families will contribute to the cost of education. That's going to vary. Again, it's going to be based on income. It's going to be based on number in the household. It's going to be based on how many are in college in the household. So there's going to be this formula that all this information that we're going to talk about in a little bit comes together to really show this is what the government believes your contribution should be to the college education. The EFC will never change for that year. It is the same at every school, regardless of the school's cost of attendance. One school is going to cost more than another. That's the cost of attendance. EFC, your expected family contribution, your income isn't changing just because your student is considering private school versus a public school versus the other options that they may be considering. So the EFC is always going to be the same. Cost of attendance, going to be based on the school cost. EFC is going to be the same. Sometimes EFC changes. As you'll find out, we're looking for tax information from last year's taxes. We know the pandemic has caused a lot of changes for families, and you might be like, well, we lost a job, we gained a job, whatever the situation may be. You can always appeal that with your institution, with your school. We process lots of those appeals for our students because we know that tax information wasn't accurate for the students for this year. And so they provide some documentation to our financial aid office. They make some adjustments and then they can update the packages as needed. The only way need can be established for many scholarships is if families complete the FAFSA. Because as you see, it is determined by a federal formula. So it's consistent for all people, all students, all schools. That is the only way, the most consistent tool we have to establish need is through the FAFSA. Types of financial aid we have out there. We have scholarships. This is the free money. I always tell our students and anybody on the line, make sure you are applying to scholarships. Please, please, please. Scholarships are free money. It is money you do not pay back to anybody. It is money they're giving to you as a benefit of your work that you have put in throughout your high school career. The involvement you've had in high school, outside of the high school walls, out in your community, all the activities that you have done, leadership, whatever it may be. So you want to apply for those scholarships. Those scholarships are going to come in really handy. So keep that in mind. Listen to people when they tell you to complete the scholarships. We want you to make that money. Grants are another. These are based on that financial aid formula, but grants are also not paid back. So any kind of grants that we have that you're getting at any level, they're also free aid, essentially. The other aid that you have available is loans. Loans are going to be in the student name only, except for the Parent Plus loan. If the parents choose to apply for a Parent Plus loan, then that loan is in the parent name. And that will be up to the parents if they want to take that out or not for their student. If they are denied the Parent Plus loan, that does open up some additional aid for the students and the unsubsidized direct loans there. So loans, again, this is the only way you can also apply for federal loans is if you complete the FAFSA. Federal work study, this is something we get questioned a lot because when you complete the FAFSA, it asks you, do you want to be considered for federal work study? And, it's up to you if you want to be considered for that. Essentially, a work study is, I would say yes, put down yes on that, because what it does is it allows you to have $2,000, $3,000, a pool of money that an office on the campus can hire you, and it's not coming out of their budget. So it allows you to earn that money. It could be used for spending money, everyday money, but it also allows offices to hire you more readily on their campuses because it helps their budget out, and especially right now. So that federal work study, once you've exhausted it, then that department may say, okay, it's been great having you this year, but we're now done. Or they may also keep you on their own funds. So it's not going to hurt you to say yes on the work study program. External scholarships. Okay, when we're talking about scholarships, we have lots of opportunities. And I know Ms. Learback has lots of opportunities listed in their office and on their website. Please use them. Richland County is so fortunate to have the number of scholarships we do, not only at Shelby High School, but also in the county for Richland. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But many of these scholarships, sometimes people will tell themselves that somebody else will get all the money. And, you know, we always have somebody in our mind. I remember that when I was in high school. I'm like, oh, they always win everything. They're perfect. They're great. They have the great GPA. They're going to get all the scholarships. And you only get scholarships if you apply. And if you don't apply, you're 100% guaranteed not getting that money. And there are sometimes some very specific criteria for scholarships that you may be the only one that qualifies for it. The other person you're thinking of may not qualify for it at all. You don't know what their situation is. And I have had students that I have gone up to and I said, here's a scholarship, $4,000. You are the only one at our school that fits this based on major and location. All you have to do is fill it out. And they didn't do it. I was like, I can't give money away. So there is money every year that goes unclaimed. And I don't want that to happen. I instead want your students to be the ones that make money on scholarships, because if they earn scholarships and grants that are more than their tuition and fees, they get that back as a refund to use in other ways. This happens. We have students who will do that. If you put in 20 minutes to fill out a scholarship and you get $1,000, that's a great return on investment. And my tips are also to make sure that you get your own Gmail account, Yahoo account, something that's maybe just for scholarships. So if you do get some of that spam mail based on the sites you may use that are still legitimate, but they still send you a lot of ads, it doesn't clutter up the rest of your internet, your email accounts. And you can just look at it whenever you're ready to apply for scholarships the next year. So again, just make sure you apply. Answers to a lot of questions are going to be the same across the applications. Keep those answers in a Word document. Keep them in there, copy and paste them into the scholarships. A very common one is, what did you do during your high school years? You know, that could be within the school, that could be within the community, within your church, where you may have worked, whatever it may be. Very much look at the different scholarships in your area. Banks in the area also have some that may be specific for certain schools, certain programs. You may have some scholarships that are related directly to the career that you're looking into, but they may not be available till second year. They want to make sure that you're serious about that. So again, make sure you fill out the scholarship applications. Locally, we have the Richland County Foundation. I really want you to make sure you get this website, richlandcountyfoundation.org. Amazing scholarships that they hand out that students have to apply. And as you go to that, here's a checklist of what they tell us that students need. They will need to have permission for them to talk to our financial aid office. We can't just tell anybody saying, Jennifer Fry applied for a scholarship. We need to know this information. I can't, the office can't tell them about my financial aid application or my FAFSA information without me granting permission to that school to do that. So you need to make sure that you complete that and grant permission for the foundation to talk to the institutions you're applying to. That student aid report, which is something you get after the FAFSA is completed, you're going to need that. A current transcript for college scholarships, you're going to need to get one from your counseling office. So just make sure that you ask for that in plenty of time, not the day before the deadline. That will make people upset. So don't ask for it the day before. You want to make sure you're meeting all those deadlines. And then if going for the career technical scholarships, you need the Work Keys Skills Assessment, and they'll have that for you as well to complete. So again, keep that in mind, richlandcountyfoundation.org. Okay, so talking a little bit about finding the price of college, and this right here, the net price calculator. You can just Google this. You can Google it and just put net price calculator, Ashland University, net price calculator, The Ohio State University. And it's going to give you the information that they've been given from the universities. And it's an easy way to find the costs without having to be searching through everybody's websites right away. And if you're looking at multiple schools, sometimes it's very helpful to have that in different ways. All right, the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. You've heard this a lot throughout the night. We're going to give you some tips in regards to what makes up the FAFSA. But I want to point out that the very important title of it is free application. Free application. There are people out there who will say that they'll fill out the FAFSA for you. They'll do a better job. It'll be great. It'll only be $75. Well, everything they're asking you for information is exactly what you would be filling out on this form. And nowadays it's all electronic. There's some great ways to get that information in there better. Do not pay anybody to complete the FAFSA. It is a free application. Please, please, please don't pay anybody. Just remember that free part. The application is open. It opened just a few days ago. So I would say start looking around in it, start getting it completed. Look at the schools you are considering to see what your deadlines are for the different schools. For Ohio State, that priority deadline is February 1st. Some schools may have a priority deadline of December 1st. I don't know of any that are too much sooner than that, but they may be out there. So the earlier you can get it in, the better. And then also the FAFSA is something you must complete every year. It is not something you get to do 1 year and then you're done. You do need to do that every single year. So if you do miss a deadline for a school for their priority deadline, you can certainly go and complete it the next year by the deadline.
Wanted to pop in really quickly. Last Thursday, we had a senior meeting where we talked about financial aid. Students were given yellow handouts. One of those handouts was the FAFSA priority deadlines for all Ohio schools. So students do have a paper copy. I also posted that on the Google Classroom. So that's a really nice thing to have a quick glance and know what those priority deadlines are for those schools in Ohio.
That's great because it's a long list. It's definitely a big list. All right, there's 5 steps we kind of put together into completing the FAFSA. This is something kind of takes you as a tool, kind of takes you through some of the information we will be going through. So completing this one, we're going to start with the username and password. Every student and one parent or guardian must have an ID. You are going to go to studentaid.gov and you see this is what it will look like when you download this on your phone. It's an app. Now you can also do it on your computer, whatever's easier. In the bottom, you will see that it says create an FSA ID account. Make sure that you do that. That is the only way you can electronically sign the form is by having this ID. And again, the student has an ID and the parent or guardian has an ID. They must be separate. If this is your second, third student, you already have an FSA ID, that's great. You can use that same one as the parent. You do not need to create a new one for each student. We do recommend downloading the app. It's just easier at your fingertips right there. So who can receive federal student aid? Students must be a U.S. citizen. They must have a high school diploma or about to graduate. For prospective students or seniors right now, this is assuming that you're going to graduate when they give you this financial aid or federal aid projections. Be enrolled in a degree seeking program. Males, you must be registered with Selective Service, and everyone must have a valid social security number. That's really the main way that we match things up, is based on the social security number on the application and on the FAFSA form. You cannot be in default on any previous student loans and cannot have been convicted for possession, sale of illegal drugs while receiving student aid. So that's going to be more of our non-traditional students there. This is an important slide. I can't answer much more than what we got on here, but if you have some individual questions, we can always answer them at the end as well, or more one-on-one. But it kind of takes you through, we have a lot of different family situations for our students. And we have a lot more than even what's listed within this graphic, but this kind of encompasses the most common graphics. So if your parents are married to each other, or if they live together, may not be married, whatever the situation may be. So it kind of tells you what information is going to be used on the FAFSA form. When you're completing the FAFSA, one of the great things is right next to it is going to be help. They're going to have help tips for every question. This has vastly been improving every year as they get more questions, as they encounter more situations. So I always suggest that you default to the help when you're completing the application. And if you really get into a pickle, then there is an 800 help number that you can use on the app, maybe even an instant chat feature on there. We can answer some high level questions individually. We get questions all the time, especially as we get near the February 1st, but we just want to make sure that there is help available as you complete it. Following people do not count as parents on the FAFSA unless they've legally adopted the student. This is current as of right now. Things may change, in their definitions, but this just gives some ideas in regards to what does it mean to count as a parent on the FAFSA. We have a lot of students who will sometimes have to work pretty hard to get certain financial information or get signatures from their family. Up until a student is 24, even if they are told, the student is told, I'm paying for it all myself, nobody's helping me, it's all me. I understand that. I 100% understand that. That's how I was when I went to college. But the government doesn't see it that way. They see that you may be paying for it, but somebody is probably helping support you with wherever you live, food, whatever kind of support is there. So that's why it's up till 24. You do need to have somebody else's information in there. Okay, the next one is, what is the information that you're going to need to gather for when you create that ID and you complete the FAFSA? You will need the student's information. Much of the information we already said: date of birth, social security, permanent address, the 2020 tax information. Your student may not have completed a tax or any tax forms for 2020. That's okay. You'll enter that information on there, and then you have to have that ID. You want to have that information handy so you can complete the forms. You will have the option when you use the app, the studentaid.gov app, that you can download it directly from the IRS website. I highly recommend doing that. Students who have done that have found information's accurate because it's pulling the right information off the tax information rather than them trying to figure it out, or the parents help figure out, how the lines match up with the different tax forms that they use. The tip that they tell us is that the permanent address information must be entered the exact same it is on the tax information. So if you spell out street on your tax information, you need to spell out street in your permanent address information. So just keep that in mind. Everything needs to match up perfectly, so then it matches up with the IRS website and your information can download in there. You have the personal information. Selective service is important. If your student is not 18 yet, you do have a grace period to be able to do that. But if a student is 18, they have not done selective service, then at least for Ohio State, they're going to be charged out-of-state tuition. Until we get that selective service number, they're going to be considered an out-of-state student. So it's just incentive that the state has put out there to make sure that you get that piece complete. It's complying with the federal government. These are federal funds. Dependency information. This is things that may affect that 24 years of age. If that person is married, has children, guardianship, orphan, veteran, graduate school by 24, that seems crazy to me, but we do have people in graduate school earlier in 24. Those type of pieces will affect dependency. You may need supporting documents then that will then be submitted to FAFSA or to the college that you are looking to attend. You have an option to send the FAFSA to up to 10 campuses, to 10 schools. So, as a student, look and see what schools are you looking at right now. Maybe you don't have 10, that's okay. Maybe you have more than 10. But you can put in there a number of schools right now. They'll each have a code. You'll be able to search the code. For us, we're all Ohio State, so you don't need to have one for Ohio State Mansfield. You know, we have other schools that have regional campuses. They may or may not need to have a separate code for their regional campuses. So you want to be thoughtful on that. And just because you sent your financial aid information out there doesn't mean that you have to apply there. It also doesn't mean you're stuck with those 10 campuses. If you decide in a month or two, you're like, oh, I didn't put down, you know, Ashland University and I want to go there. You can go back into your FAFSA and you can always add a school. That's not a problem at all. The school will not pull in your financial aid information until they have an application on file. Once they get that application on file, then it will start pulling that information in, and it happens every couple of weeks for us anyway. So it's a big data pull, but that is how that is used. Parent information. This is an example of information that you will need to have available to you. We do get questions a lot about net worth of businesses, farms, assets. We cannot tell you what to put down. You need to decide that, what you're going to put down, and just follow that form. And it's what you believe your worth of those items are at the time you are completing the tax form. So keep that in mind when if you're doing any net worth of assets there. This is really where that data retrieval tool comes in handy, especially if you have a lot of tax forms or forms that can be difficult. You know, let the data retrieval tool help you. Sometimes people may have their tax preparer try and complete the FAFSA for them. You're going to need to talk with your tax preparer if they're familiar with that, if they can do that. I haven't heard either way from families if it makes it easier or more difficult. Again, the student financial information, their net worth of assets. I know we're in an agriculturally heavy county here and community. If things are in their name, that's going to need to be, you know, how you consider those assets, whatever's in that student's name at that time, and go from there. Okay, again, that FSA ID, again, when you assign that form at the end, that application, your ID, the student must sign and the parent must sign or guardian, and then you're going to submit. And what's great about submitting it is you wait about 3 or 4 days. You can go back into the FAFSA and make sure there's no errors that you need to correct. Kind of once things have caught up to itself in the system, it will tell you, you need to correct this, you need to correct that, or it will just say, there you go. Once you submit, it will also give you your EFC, your expected family contribution we talked about. So take a note of that for submission. If you do that, do the FAFSA and your EFC means that you're Pell eligible, many schools will waive the application fee. For Ohio State, we'll waive our $60 application fee if you can just give us a screenshot of it saying that you are Pell eligible. We try to make it very easy for students. It's one of the few things you can waive. So take advantage of those pieces if you can. But again, make sure that you submit that by the priority deadline of the schools you're looking at. You want to get it in. Now, with that said, depending on the school, that's a priority deadline. They need to have some kind of a deadline for their students to have things submitted, because the ones who are really early are going to be waiting for a decision. If you add that school after the priority deadline, it's okay. Go ahead and add that school. It's just you missed the deadline, but go ahead and add it so you can still see what you will get for aid. If this, depending on what the school has available for aid, they may have aid available. It may just be federal aid that will be available, but a priority deadline is a priority. It's not the absolute deadline. You can't do anything after that time. So please keep that in mind when you're talking with your financial aid offices. Just to let you know, this will be for people, families who have students who have been in college before. They may be aware of this, hopefully not in a bad way, but students' aid could change. If you drop or withdraw from classes and it causes you to be below full time, that's going to adjust your aid. It may also cause you to have to pay back some of that aid to the school, and you're going to see it on your bill. It all kind of depends how the school runs that. If you add classes, if you fail classes, financial aid, you have to show satisfactory progress to completing your degree. And if you have students who want to be in what students will joke are career students who are just taking, lots and lots of credits and they're there forever, eventually that aid will run out because they're like, man, you're like 230 credits. You should have graduated a long time ago. Like you have 2 degrees now. They're not getting aid at that point because they're not showing that they're successfully completing their path to degree. So they must successfully pass the classes and maintain that 2.0 or higher GPA. And also the aid may change if the household income changes. Again, if somebody got a job and they are making more money, that may raise the expected family contribution. And if they lost a job, that may help and get the student to be more Pell eligible, where there's maybe some plans or programs that a school has for students who are Pell eligible. So make sure that you are communicating with your financial aid offices. Even if the school year has started, let them know. Your financial aid office is going to be very attuned to what your student needs, and things happen. We have an emergency fund here on our campus, and Ohio State has. Many schools did receive care funds. So they do have that ability to offer funds for students based on whatever metrics they've created, but they don't know a student needs the help until a student tells them that there's something going on. So just develop that relationship with your financial aid office, check in with them, especially when it gets closer to deadlines, and be like, hey, I think I have everything. Can you make sure that you can see my FAFSA in the system? We want to make sure that your students are able to see that and there's no surprises later on, especially that first semester when the bill is due a week before classes start, typically 1 or 2 weeks before. And you're like, I thought I had financial aid. And then we're like, well, we never got it in. And then you go back and you find out you didn't add that school that you're actually attending right then. So very important to be on top of these pieces. Just work with your institution, work with the college that you are attending. That student aid report, that's what we're talking about, that will show your EFC and your Pell eligibility at that time. And then if there's any other required documentation you may need, at times an institution may ask for verification. Something maybe didn't line up on the FAFSA and your tax information or what have you. And they just say, hey, can you bring that in for us? Can we get a copy of that so we can verify for the government that is true, that information is there. It may also be they're just pulling random students to verify the information because that's what they need to do as a checks and balances. So again, just always watch for those required documentation and always watch your student account. Your student account, you need to log in, that's at the school you're looking at, and it will tell you probably in a to-do list what they need and what the documentation is. For us, it comes out in March. So financial aid packages are not instant in Ohio State. That will come out in March for incoming students. And then that's when you can start to see what that aid package is. Some schools, they may be able to tell you right there on the spot what your aid package is. It just kind of depends. Timeline that kind of helps. This is, again, fitting in there for most schools, is right now is completing the FAFSA, completing the college application by their priority deadline. Each school is going to be different. Even regional campuses within an institution are going to be different. So make sure that you know these deadlines. They're starting to become, these deadlines are not going to be flexible as you start working through this process. So make sure that you are meeting those deadlines, put them in your calendar, put them in your phone, whatever it may be, make sure you have that information. Complete the institutional scholarship. For Ohio State, we have Scholarship Universe. That is what you will complete. That also includes outside scholarships will feed into that system. So it's kind of nice to have a one-stop area for scholarships. Make sure you're looking for those external scholarships. The scholarships you see locally from the Richland County Foundation, like I mentioned, and other places. Make sure that you're filling them out. Never should pay money to submit an application for a scholarship. Never pay money to have the opportunity to maybe win money. If that happens, definitely check with other people, because I would say probably about 99% of the time that is a scam. So make sure that you're checking on that. January through April, you're going to start getting your financial aid awards, again, continuing to apply for external scholarships, and just really start comparing financial aid packages. Look at your budget. Have a financial aid package that say, okay, here's my top 4 schools, and here's what the costs are. Here's the aid I'm getting from them, and what works for you, what works the best for you that you're going to be able to invest in your education and in the future. We know this is an investment, and that's why many people are willing to help you through those scholarships to help you get to your end goal. May, you're going to pay acceptance fees, enrollment fees, many schools may call them. May 1st is a national deadline for those. Application fees or acceptance fees, sorry, are typically non-refundable. So that is your commitment to that school saying, save me a seat. I'm going to be there in August. I can't wait. So be aware of that. Those typically are not put on a student bill. They do need to be paid in advance. They're not covered by typically by financial aid. Same with housing. That is something to ask if you would like to have your housing deposit, if that can be put on your student bill, or if that too has to be paid separately before you get your housing contract submitted and get your placement into where you're going to be living. That also varies from school to school. June through July, it's becoming more real. You're getting your class schedule. Your class schedule is what will start your bill, because now they know how many credit hours you're taking, what classes, what fees, maybe some science labs or other classes may have fees associated to them. You're going to finalize your housing if you haven't already done the housing contract, and just complete any loan processes that you may have through those federal loans. You still need to sign promissory notes. You'll need to do entrance counseling, basically just saying that, yes, you know you need to pay this back, and here's what that process looks like. Many schools will have payment plans. So for us, like, we put the cost of one semester, we divide it out amongst the months. So the end of first semester is all paid for by December. Payment plans are helpful, especially if you're waiting on a loan to come through, maybe a private loan. It's just not going to be there by the first day of class or when the first bill is due. Do a payment plan. You can maybe make the first payment, and then that loan will come in. You can pay off the rest of it, and your bill is covered. August to September, that's when you're paying that first bill and you're starting to move in, or you're starting classes. Maybe if you're local and you don't have to move into a residence hall or apartment, you may not be moving in, but you will start classes, and that's become really real for you. And make sure that you're doing those first day classes pictures. So that doesn't stop in college either, just to warn the students out there. So now with this time, this is a lot of information in a very short time. Questions that you may have. I have our information up here for admissions and our financial aid. We will help other people, especially we know that not everybody's going to come to Ohio State. We would love to welcome many people, but if somebody just has a quick financial aid question and they're like, hey, I listened to your presentation, can you help me with this? We will help you. We want to help you be successful. We know this is a huge process. This is what I'm here for. This is what Kendra Boggs is here for. She's our financial aid counselor. We're very much here to help you get through this process, get familiar with it, and just helps you from year to year. She's been through this process with her students. She's in it right now with some of her kids. So she's even in it as a parent perspective and knows where you're probably coming from in it. So with this, at this time, I'll have Edie come back on if she has anything else that she would like to add. And I am looking at in the chat and Q&A for questions. So if you have any, please feel free to put them in there.
All right. Hopefully that was, very informative. I know students last week were quite overwhelmed with all the information. So I know they, and I also appreciate the parents that are chiming in tonight to hear a financial aid overview. This is really quite new. The end of October, actually Friday, October 29th, is going to end our college application week at Shelby High School. So there's going to be different things going on throughout the week to kind of basically creating a time and a place for students to apply to college, but also complete the FAFSA. So Friday, October 29th from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., we will have 20-minute slots available. Parents, you can come in. to sign up for any of those, and actually get some one-on-one help completing the FAFSA if that is something that you would like to do. So I don't know how we're gonna do those signups quite yet, if that will be like a Google survey or something, because we are kind of just developing what that week is going to look like, but I wanted to make you guys aware of that. Often senior parents want to know about the local scholarship program. I gave students a sneak peek about the local scholarship program 2 weeks ago, because I know that these seniors have not seen that take place live for 2 years. So we have about $190,000 that's only available to Shelby students. We will roll that out in mid-November. Students will know about it in a group setting at the high school. I go to Pioneer to present those as well. And I also provide that information to the College Now instructors to disseminate out to our students that go to College Now. I also post that information on Google Classroom so that students have all the information that they need, and they can always call or ask or stop in to the high school guidance office.
Great. We had somebody ask if a recording of this will be available, and yes, it will be. We will get a link to this and plus a couple of those other resources out to the counseling office by the end of this week. We're out traveling this week in different locations, so it's a matter of getting that access to it. So we will have that out there for your students. All right. Well, thank you very much for this. I know it's a lot of information. Questions will come up. Please contact us. We're more than happy to help. Richland County Foundation is also more than happy to help from their perspective, what they have as well. But I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having us. Have a great night.
Thank you, Jennifer.